Jay Inslee calls in the National Guard on peaceful Republican protesters. Coming up next.
My name is Matthew Heines. I'm a veteran. I'm a veteran of the 82nd Airborne. I took the oath, and I'm here to defend my state.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Yesterday, it was early in the morning. Very early in the morning, I should add, I received an email from Mr. Tim Eyman, who is he's a gubernatorial candidate in Washington State, and he holds these rallies in Olympia and around King County, whatever, for his various issues. Never attended one, but I thought it might be interesting, and I became interested in this because this is the first actually rally that the Republicans have held since Joe Biden stole the election from Donald Trump. So I went to do a couple of things. And I wanted to show my solidarity with the Republican Party, and I wanted to announce that after running as an independent in the last election, that I was going to run as a Republican in the 2022 congressional race in the 1st District in Washington State. So I thought that would be great news for them. But let's continue on. Now, there were a number of things that I wanted to talk about and give a speech about and ask about at this rally. And the number one thing is, at least for the Republican Party in Washington State, is what are we going to do about the mail-in ballots? What are we going to do about these voting machines? How many of the machines in Washington State are Dominion voting machines? What are we going to do, and how do we get rid of the mail-in ballot system? And I also wanted to point out that before the mail-in ballot system, Washington State was the most conservative Republican state in the country practically. So things changed real fast with mail-in ballots. I just wanted to point that out, and I wanted to ask if anybody there had a plan. Now I'm going to give you a little broader perspective on history. And the first perspective on history I'm going to give you is back in the year 1775, when a group of farmers stood in the Lexington town green and told the British that were trying to march through to seize guns and to seize powder so that people could not resist the tyrannical rule of the British. They stood there and said, "Nope, you're not coming through." And the British said, "You better put down your arms." And there was a shot from somebody, and that was, of course, the shot heard around the world. Well, that started the American Revolution. And what I want to point out to you is that it's basically, if you can't understand the parallels and the analogy, it's really kind of happening now. So the next date I want to talk to you about is 1917, the Russian Revolution, and that was 100 years ago. Now, there was a timeline laid out, and if you don't buy any of this, I encourage you to look at my book, Deceptions of the Ages, Mormons, Freemasons, and Extraterrestrials, because this has all been mapped out. It's all been planned out. Everything you're seeing happening is all going to plan. So in 2017 or 2016, Hillary Clinton was supposed to win the election, and we were supposed to become a communist country. And anyway, so that was the plan. And of course, Donald Trump and the American people foiled that plan for 4 years. And that was why you had all of these Russia things and all the impeachments and everything, is because they have infiltrated the government, basically. So they've infiltrated the government with all these people. And now is the timeline to turn us over to the Russian, whatever, the communism. But I also want to point out that when Joe Biden stole this election, Hitler did the same thing in 1936. He trashed the Weimar Republic, right? And I know you probably don't understand anything about that, but in 1936, they basically gave a fait accompli that Hindenburg was done and that Hitler was going to be the prime chancellor, whatever they call those people, in Germany. And you know what happened after that? They brought out the army, and anybody who didn't agree with them, they went to prison, and things didn't go so well for them or their families. So I just want you to point these things. I just want to point these things out to you, because you might be the kind of person who can see a parallel, and you might have some flags going up in your mind. If you're not, well, then good for you. Okay, now I'm not going to sit here trying to convince you of anything, but I just want you to understand and remember one fact. Jay Inslee allowed the takeover of a part of Seattle. He allowed a police precinct to get overrun, violence. He allowed murders, rapes, the destruction of millions and millions of dollars in property, the destruction of business in downtown Seattle, the permanent destroyed the reputation of Seattle as a sane city. And all these things he did, and he allowed and never called out the National Guard. But a few peaceful protesters show up in Olympia, and he has got the National Guard called out. But it gets much, much, much worse than that. Every war we have fought, World War I, World War II, Korea, etc., was to establish the U.S. as the number one country, and then to take over the U.S. as a communist, in a communist takeover, henceforth taking over the rest of the world and making the entire world communist. And so that is exactly what the timeline called for, and we are at that point right now. Now, as the famous historian Dr. James Burke once said, you can't know where you're going until you know where you've been. So now that we know where we've been, now we're going to kind of look at where we're going. I went to Olympia to talk about the future. I went to ask them a number of things and to talk about a number of things that need to happen right now. I wanted to know what the plan was for getting rid of the voter machines and the mail-in ballots. I wanted to know what the plan was for getting Inslee recalled and possibly recalling these horrible politicians, or whatever, what legal avenues we have to file injunctions, to impeach them, to fight them, and to show them that we are the American voters. We put them in place, and we can certainly take them out. So that was one of the things I really went there to talk about. Now, the next thing that I went down there to talk about is I wanted to find out, in the lieu of people being banned off of social media, obviously what they're trying to do is cut off everybody's ability to communicate. Basically, the social media monster, the snake, has risen up, and it is turning around to bite everybody that doesn't think the way the Chinese Communist Party thinks. So I wanted to find out, what are we going to do in case people are cut off? How do we communicate with each other? Another thing that I think is very important is, what are we going to do when they show up? Because they're not going to try to attack everybody at once. They're going to take everybody individually, right, in the night. And you're not going to know that people have disappeared, because there's no way that they can contact people or tell people that they've been grabbed by Inslee and his thugs. So what happens? What do we do if people start to disappear? What is the plan of action for that? Now, the last thing I thought was pretty important was, how do we support conservative thinkers? How do we support conservative businesses? How do we identify ourselves as a conservative business that, people can buy from, that we're pro-American, we're not buying things from certain countries, that we are standing for our rights, for our Constitution, and for the American people? How do we show people that we're not some liberal freak tank? Well, we didn't get to talk about any of those things. Now, the first thing I got to tell you is Olympia is a small town. So as I pulled into town, you basically have the Capitol on your left as you turn right, and then you go down into the town, which leads into the Port of Olympia. Pretty small operation, but the Capitol grounds are fairly extensive. And as I looked over to where the rally was supposed to be, now remember, the last rally I went to was last summer, and there were at least 5 500 people there, maybe 1,000. The whole field, this whole field was covered with people. There were loudspeakers and banners and flags, and it was really a great show. But when I went to go to this one, there was just a few people basically walking around. So I thought, well, maybe it's another location near the steps of the Capitol, whatever, which was what the email had said. So I said, okay. So I called my wife and told her I'd got there safely, and it looked pretty quiet, and I was going to go down and do my thing. Now, when I say do my thing is a rather complicated affair. And that is because ever since I started running as a candidate, every rally I've gone to, there's no loudspeaker. They're very ill-prepared. And so I bring my own loudspeaker. I have my own, basically, PA system. I bring my video equipment so that I can record myself, because if there's 15 to 50 people in the audience, I want people, at least on YouTube, to see that I went to this event and made a speech. So from the very beginning, I have always taken all of this equipment, which requires getting one of those carts, right? So I have a pretty big speaker, and then I have all my camera equipment, et cetera, et cetera. You got to take water and all that. So that is the reason that when I say that I had to, get everything ready, it's not just me walking to the Capitol. It's me toting all of this equipment for half a mile to the state Capitol. Now, when I approach the state Capitol as an ex-paratrooper, I'm trained in a number of things that have to do with reconnaissance and with doing things like ambushing people and with skirmishing, et cetera, placing arms, placing particular weapon systems in certain areas. So I've got a fairly extensively trained in that. So when I arrived at the Capitol, what I saw really shocked me, because on one side, as I approached, on the east side, you had basically a skirmish line of state patrol. And then you had around this statue, ironically, of Washington's military veterans, you have I'm going to show you the map in a second here, but basically you have the protesters, then you have a few yards away a chain link fence, and behind that fence you have dozens of National Guard, more National Guard than protesters. And I would almost say more police than protesters, but that probably wouldn't be true. But definitely more National Guard than protesters all along this chain link fence. They are all armed and they all have magazines in their weapons. Now, if you don't know anything about military tactics, let's just say it like this. If it's a riot, where are the riot police? There were no riot police there. There was a skirmish line of National Guard, and then there was one place where there were a contingent of state patrolmen. Behind them was an open field, and all of this was channeled with one big building on one side so that all escape attempts would be covered by the National Guard. In other words, it was a kill zone. Jay Inslee set up a kill zone in Olympia at the state Capitol. He was getting ready to kill anybody who said or did anything that he doesn't like or the Democratic Party doesn't like. Now, you can say whatever you want, but I was in the military, and any military person that knows this or sees this are going to say the same thing. They set up a kill zone. They were going to kill these people. And I just would like to know what their standing orders were and what would have been the provocation for these people to start shooting American citizens. Again, after Jay Inslee allowed the basically rape of a whole neighborhood in Seattle, killing, looting, millions of dollars worth of damage, and he pulled back the police. You get a few dozen Republicans down there to protest his policies, and he points the National Guards or his private thugs. He points his private thugs' guns right at these people and me. So I just want people to be aware of that. And in spite of what they try to say in the news and try to twist things around, it's nothing more than that. Jay Inslee called out the National Guard on a small group of protesters, just like in 1775 in Lexington, when a small group of protesters stood out and told the British, hey, enough is enough. All right, so never mind the idealistic reasons I went, never mind what my intentions were, never mind the kill zone and the National Guard and everything else, because the whole thing from start to finish turned out to be a disaster. Now, what do I mean by that? I got down there and I made a mistake because I used these wooden stakes. You can get them at Home Depot, whatever, but I just used these wooden yard stakes to hold in my banner that says "Vote for Heines for Congress." So I was a little bit behind schedule. I said, well, I'm just going to use my light. I have these studio lights right here. I'll just use the stands for those, and hopefully the wind won't blow. Yes, hopefully the wind won't blow in January in Olympia in Washington State. Well, guess what? The wind did blow, and it didn't seem to be blowing right until I got there and tried to set up my sign. So then for the next, I don't know, I could have spent 15, 20 minutes trying to set up this banner. Now, while I'm trying to set up this banner, you have the rally going on, but unfortunately, there is the people who have put on the rally, and I guess it's just this one woman with a megaphone. She is talking with this small megaphone, while in the background there's this guy with this big loudspeaker, whatever, and he is just completely drowning her out with all of this other talk and whatever, and he just will not be quiet. And it is obvious he is going to just try to drown out anybody who's going to try to speak. So I have a banner that won't stay up. I have a loudmouth jerk who won't be quiet. And then, of course, you have this little tiny megaphone, and nobody can even hear what the speaker's saying. So everybody's all huddled around the speaker. So you're probably asking yourself, well, how does that affect you? And how it affects me is that if I go to give a speech, then I'm going to have the tiny megaphone, which nobody's going to be able to hear what I see. I'm going to have to hold a megaphone, which I'm really not good at. And I'm going to have this jerk in the background making all this noise so that the recording of the speech that I came to make, nobody's going to be able to hear it on my phone. So with all of that, I am just sitting there going, boy, this is such a waste of time. Well, I thought, okay, if this is going to be like this, then I'm just going to do my thing and I'm going to get out of here. So I went up to the woman with the megaphone. I waited till she was taking kind of a break, and I told her who I was. I gave her my card and I said, I'd like to speak for a few minutes if that's okay. And her words were not exactly kind. Her reaction was not kind. She scowled at me and said, no. She said, I have enough speakers, and definitely was not nice about it. So what was I to do? Well, all right. So I did the only thing I could do. I grabbed a couple of my cards. I went around and I just told people, I'm Matthew Heines. I'm running for Congress in the 1st District in 2022. And I would like your support if you live in my district. And so that was pretty much all I could do at the point. But the other thing I wanted to do was to give my speech. And even though I wouldn't be giving it to the people necessarily, but at least I could go down there and give a speech on my phone. But with this guy just going on and on, every time I tried to do it, it was like, is this really, are people going to even be able to hear me speaking over this guy? Because it was really that loud. So as I'm handing out my cards, it was very interesting. I ran into an interesting lady, and her name is Leah Smart. And she seems to know a lot about the coronavirus and this immunization stuff. So I'm just going to put her information right here. I'm going to show you both sides. And I promised her I would do it. And her promise to me was that she would get me involved, because she told me some very scary stories about what they're trying to vaccinate kids with. And it really is just kind of freaky. So I'll leave you her information and you can check it out and decide for yourself. All right, so that was really cool. And then I talked to another guy who said that his sheriff, where he lives in Oregon, the cops wouldn't enforce these COVID lockdowns. And the governor sent the health department to people's houses on Thanksgiving to count people's heads. And the sheriff told them, if you go to one house and I get one call from anybody who complains about you, I'm going to arrest the whole bunch. So it's people like that that we need to respect, and we need to endorse, and we need to support. Not these people who are just basically playing along with a well-scripted, basically pseudo-plague. All right, so that is the story. That is the backstory. That is the buildup. That's why I went. That's what happened. But don't take my word for it. Here you have it. I'm going to post as many of my videos as I took down there as possible, so that you can understand the level of chaos. Normally I don't do this, but I think it's entertaining for its own sake.
All right, so here we are at the this is my first report at this rally, and so we've got it looks like we've got the Eyman people here, and over there we have some nutcase. So he's not really letting the Eyman people talk. So along with that, I have this problem here. You see that right there? That is my sign. When I vote for Heines sign. This is hilarious. These are our boys from the National Guard. Hello, boys. How's everything today? Working on Sunday, earning that National Guard pay. Loving the governor. Yeah, they'll let these rioters tear up cities, but peaceful people come and they got to bring you guys out. Does that make any sense to you? Are you guys going to shoot Americans when they order you to? Is that what you're here for? I didn't think so. Well, you guys are doing a good job. Ex-82nd Airborne. So we're all on the same team, boys. What I've been trying to do basically is tell people I'm running for Congress in the 1st District, and so I've come here to do that. And there's a few dozen people over there, but unfortunately when I asked if I could speak here, and very rudely they said, no, you can't speak here. So I don't have anything else to do here but just tell you what's going on. With a few dozen people over there, we have about the same, well, maybe twice as many National Guard over here, right? And these people are just talking. There's some guy over there like provoking these guys, and I guess he's finished for now. But yeah, it's really, what is it? It's about 24, 50 people at the most. And for me, driving all the way down here just to listen to these people say the same stuff is just a huge waste of my time. Hello everybody, thank you for letting me come here. Thank you for inviting me down here. Unfortunately, we have some chowderheads behind us. Right behind us here is we have the National Guard. We have all kinds of police. And at this point right now, the demonstration is pretty much breaking down. So what we really need to talk about today is why we're here. I'm just going to hold this on for... Hello everybody, I'm Matthew Heines and I'm running for the United States Congress in Washington State's 1st District. Now, I'm down in Olympia today, and we're at the Capitol. The election is over, and these people came down to attend a rally. Now, what happened in the rally is, and I mean, there's like a few dozen people here, but you've got cops everywhere. You have got National Guard over on this side, and for what? A few dozen protesters. And also, I have to point out, we have some nutcase over here with his loud microphone. So in a few minutes here, I'm going to turn on my loudspeaker and I'm going to blow him away. But I want to talk to you guys today about why I'm here and about why we need to... I'm going to have to stop this for a second. All right, so we got this chowderhead over here, and he's back again. He was here earlier, back again, just being rude. And so I'm just going to, once again, I'm going to talk to you guys for a minute. I'm Matthew Heines. I am in Olympia, and I'm just trying to give a speech. Now, the first thing I'm going to tell you is I came all the way down here. I was invited by Tim Eyman, and when I went to give my speech, some crazy woman said she wouldn't let me do it. So I'm going to give my speech now. It's not a long one, but since I'm in Olympia, I want to make sure I leave here with something for you guys and my YouTube channel. All right, the first thing that we need to talk about is we're going to talk a little bit about history. Now, the first time I came down here was after Trump got elected president. I was down in the field about a half a mile away down there. And there were a lot of people, not a lot of people, but there were quite a few people. But there were about as many protesters as there were people. And I should point out they were paid protesters. All right. So we've got this guy back again.
You're here with anger in your heart. You know, Satan has basketball.
So these nuts, I guess, are just going to be on the other side of my report. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about the history of why we're here. Now, it is 2020. In 2017, Donald Trump was not supposed to be elected president. Hillary Clinton was going to be elected president 100 years after the Russian Revolution. The Communist Revolution was supposed to happen in 2016, but they messed up because Donald Trump won. So now what they've done is in 2020, they just went out and outright stole the election. So let me just point out, let me remind you of some things. First of all, China virus, well, no. Trump impeachment doesn't work. China virus hits the U.S. Suddenly, they shut everything down. They attack Donald Trump, and they use it for a political ammunition, right? Came right from China. Now, just imagine for yourself if that had come from Afghanistan or Saudi Arabia, we would have nuked them. But it came from China. So what happened is all the people who make money from China, like your representative Suzanne Bilbeni, well, they made a killing, and this is all gone according to plan. So the first thing I want to talk to you about, and the first thing that I want you to do, is you have got to boycott Google. You have got to boycott Facebook, and you have got to boycott Twitter. Now there are other places that you can go. You can go on Parler. There are alternatives to Microsoft, but we have got to find other ways to stay together. Now, in 2018, if you look at my Real Deal, right here, I said number 8 of the Real Deal was to stop funding these high-tech companies, and we never did. So now look what happened. The other day, I was banned on Facebook. Most people are getting banned on Facebook, and this place is just getting overrun by nutcases like this. So, these people are here, and why are they here? They're here to talk about the same crap, the same things that got them to lose their elections, and it's just the same stuff. So what I've tried to do in every election is I've tried to give something to our youth. And when I do that, I'm talking about the Real Deal. So I'm going to read you the real deal, because that's what I came here for. Because all these people came here to hear the same thing, and it doesn't work. And every time I come here, there's less and less people, and what's going to happen? The problem is that these people do not appeal to anybody but a very small group, and it's getting smaller every day. So, the real deal. Again, I'm Matthew Heines, running in the 1st District in Washington State. Number 1, forbid U.S. government borrowing. We're now 27 trillion, 30 trillion in debt. Number 2, free tuition at public universities. Number 3, legalize marijuana and use the profits for free tuition. Number 4, DACA amnesty in exchange for a complete immigration freeze. Now, I don't need to tell you what a nightmare immigration has been for our country. Now, the next thing is number 5, smart labor cards for migrants attached to employer bank accounts. Number 6, mandatory sentences for hiring undocumented workers. Number 7, establish English as the U.S. official language. Thank God they're leaving. All right, okay. Again, I'm Matthew Heines. I'm running for Congress. I'm in Olympia. I've done this report 4 times because these nutcases keep showing up with their loud megaphones, whatever. So I came out down here to do a speech, and I went to do it, and they said you can't do a speech. And okay, I can't do a speech. Well, I'm going to do my speech right now. So my speech is this. Let's talk about history first of all. In 2017, in Russia, they overthrew the Tsar. That was 100 years ago. In 2016, Hillary Clinton was supposed to win on the anniversary of the Russian Revolution because the plan was the United States would be communist by this time. Didn't work with Donald Trump. They got delayed 4 years. But you see, as soon as Joe Biden stole the election, immediately they declared martial law. We have martial law right here. There are National Guard over there. There's nobody harmful or whatever. There's nobody tearing up buildings, shooting people, killing people, raping people. Nobody doing that. But they have the National Guard here. But they didn't have the National Guard in Seattle. So you just have to think. The Russian Revolution is now. But it's not a Russian Revolution, because who attacked us last year? China sent a biological weapon over here, and the plan was already in place. We're going to use the biological weapon to replace Trump and to put the communist regime back in power. So it's that simple. It's a history lesson. It's documented. It's a 100-year plan, and it's very simple. Now, I'm going to give you a little personal history. But enough about history and enough about the past. What we need to talk about is the future. Because if you don't act right now, you don't have a future. The first thing you need to do, shut off your Facebook, shut off Google, and shut off Twitter. If you don't shut them off, they're going to shut you off. Now remember, I do videos about this. I'm an author. When they shut you down, if you're a businessman like me, they shut you down. That's it. You don't do business anymore, and your customers can't contact you. And that's what's going to happen now. Because after the China virus, they said, we're going to pick who lives and we're going to pick who dies. And you saw that Amazon and all the Fortune 500 corporations, they all made a killing and put everybody out of business. And why is the stock market going up? It's going up because the government guaranteed the stock market, and it's going up because the big corporations don't have any competition anymore. So I'm here because there are no answers. There is nobody talking about a realistic future, and there is nobody that has a plan. But I do have a plan. It's called The Real Deal. It's called Fixing America, and it's called making the country that we're supposed to have. And I just want to point out to people that you were given a legacy. And I know a lot of people don't care. They were handed it, they don't know what it's like to live in another country. I've lived in Saudi Arabia and I've lived in Oman, and I'll tell you, they hate those countries. They hate living in those countries. They all want to live here. But what's happened is that they have had so many people come here that are trying to make this country like all these other third world countries. Well, I'm Matthew Heines. I'm running for Congress, and I say it's not going to happen on my watch. I'm running in 2022. I need support. I need money. And if you want to support me really and educate yourself, go ahead and check out one of my books or check out some of my super duper merchandise. All right, so from Olympia, Washington, it is the Tim Eyman rally, and it looks like it's pretty much broken up. At least the nutcases have gone. So I'm Matthew Heines, and I want to wish you guys all the best. Take care of yourselves, stay healthy, and whatever you do, be careful. But remember, we have to stick together. And that reminds me one other thing before I go. If you are a conservative, pro-American businessman like me, on the banner of your website, on the very right-hand corner, put a small American flag so that we know that we can trust you as an American, and we will give you our business. And I'll do the same thing on my websites as well. All right, so the key now is we need a plan, we need to boycott, and we need to stick together. And lastly, the final thing, we need to get rid of the voting machines. We need to get rid of mail-in ballots. So all those things we have to do now. That's our future. And if we don't do those in the future, well, my friends, we don't have a future.
My name is Matthew Heines. I'm a veteran. I'm a veteran of the 82nd Airborne. I took the oath, and I'm here to defend my state